The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Astoria Ballroom cast a galaxy of light upon the sea of elegantly dressed guests. It was the annual fundraising gala for the Children's Heart Foundation, an event Julian and I had chaired for the past 5 years. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. Julian, with his tailored tuxedo and easy charm, the successful architect who could command a room with a smile, and I, Beatrice, his devoted wife, always poised, always supportive, draped in a sapphire gown that matched my eyes. Tonight, however, the weight of that gown felt heavier than ever, the diamonds around my neck like a cold, glittering chain. For months, a subtle chill had crept into our 20-year marriage. It wasn't in grand fights or dramatic exits, but in the small, unspoken things. The way Julian's phone was always angled away from me, the late nights at the office that became more frequent, the scent of a perfume that wasn't mine clinging faintly to his collar. I had tried to talk to him, to breach the silent, growing chasm between us, but he would dismiss my concerns with a wave of his hand. "You're imagining things, Bea," he'd say, his voice laced with an impatience that was new and sharp. "We're just busy. It's the new project." But a woman knows. She knows in the quiet moments when the house is still, in the hollow echo of a laugh that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I had hoped I was wrong. I had prayed I was wrong. Tonight, that hope shattered. I was speaking with Mrs. Albright, a generous donor, when I saw them across the room. Julian was standing near the French doors that led to the terrace, his back partially to me. He was not alone. With him was a woman I didn't recognize, a stunning brunette in a crimson dress that seemed to shimmer with a life of its own. It was Sophia, a new junior partner at his firm he had mentioned only in passing. He was leaning in close, his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture so intimate, so possessive, it stole the air from my lungs. He whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, a bright musical sound that felt like a direct assault on my heart. Then, he did something that confirmed every fear I had tried to suppress. He leaned in further and brushed his lips against her temple, a soft, lingering kiss filled with a tenderness he hadn't shown me in years. The glass of champagne in my hand trembled. Mrs. Albright was still talking, her words a meaningless buzz in my ears. I could feel the gazes of others in the room, the curious, pitying glances from those who had also seen. In that moment, I was no longer Beatrice, the respected co-chair of the gala. I was just a woman watching her world crumble under the weight of 1,000 glittering lights. The humiliation was a physical blow, hot and sharp. I wanted to run, to hide, to disappear into the night and never look back. But then, something else sparked within me, a flicker of fire amidst the ashes of my heartbreak. It was anger. A cold, clarifying anger that burned away the tears before they could fall. 20 years. I had given him 20 years of my life, my love, my loyalty. I had stood by him when his firm was just a dream sketched on a napkin. I had raised our 2 children, managed our home, and built this life, this perfect-looking life, brick by painful brick. I would not allow him to dismantle it with a cheap public affair while I simply faded into the background. I excused myself from Mrs. Albright, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I began to walk, not towards the exit, as every instinct screamed at me to do, but towards the stage at the front of the ballroom. Each step was deliberate, a declaration. The string quartet was playing a soft, melodic piece, a gentle soundtrack to my world falling apart. As I moved through the crowd, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The pain was still there, a raw, open wound, but it was now overlaid with a powerful resolve. He wanted to create a scene. He wanted to humiliate me in front of our friends, our colleagues, the society we had spent 2 decades cultivating. I would give him a scene he would never forget. My path took me past them. Julian finally looked up, his eyes widening in surprise as he saw me approaching the stage. The smile on his face faltered, and he dropped his hand from Sophia's back. Sophia, for her part, looked at me with a flicker of something. Was it triumph? Pity? It didn't matter. She was just a symptom of a disease that had been festering for a long time. Julian took a step towards me, his expression shifting to confusion and a hint of alarm. "Beatrice? What are you doing?" he mouthed. I gave him a small, cold smile, a smile that didn't reach my eyes, and continued on my way. I would not let him stop me. Tonight, the performance was not over. It had just begun. The 4 men of the string quartet, surprised by my sudden appearance on their stage, faltered in their melody. I reached the podium where the evening's announcements had been made and gently moved the microphone stand to the center. A low murmur rippled through the ballroom as conversations died down. All eyes were on me. The spotlight, which had been softly illuminating the quartet, now found me, pinning me in its bright, unforgiving glare. For a moment, the sea of faces blurred into a single, expectant entity. I could feel Julian's stare like a physical weight from across the room, a silent, desperate plea for me to step down, to not make a scene, to maintain the facade he had so carelessly broken. I gripped the sides of the podium, my knuckles white, but when I spoke, my voice was clear and resonant, carrying to every corner of the grand hall. "Good evening, everyone," I began, a gracious smile touching my lips, the same smile I had practiced in the mirror for countless events like this one. "I hope you are all enjoying this beautiful evening. On behalf of Julian and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for your incredible generosity tonight. The Children's Heart Foundation is a cause that is, as you know, deeply important to our family." I paused, letting the familiar words hang in the air. This was the script. This was the role I was supposed to play. I saw some people relax, assuming I was simply making an impromptu closing statement. I saw Julian take a tentative step forward, a flicker of relief crossing his features. He thought he had dodged the bullet. He thought my courage would fail me. I continued, my voice taking on a new, more personal tone. "For 20 years, my husband and I have built a life together. We have built a family, a business, and a reputation in this community. We have stood on this stage year after year as partners." I let the word partners linger, infusing it with a delicate irony that only I could fully appreciate. I saw Julian freeze, his hand clenching into a fist at his side. Sophia had shrunk back slightly, her vibrant crimson dress suddenly looking garish under the focused light. She was trying to blend into the shadows of the terrace, but it was too late. Everyone had seen them together. "Partnership," I went on, my gaze sweeping the room before landing squarely on Julian, "is about trust. It's about loyalty. It's about facing the world together, in honesty and with integrity. It's a value we try to instill in our children, and it's a value we champion through the work we do with the foundation." The room was utterly silent now. The air was thick with tension. Guests were no longer looking at me with polite interest, but with rapt, almost hungry attention. They knew this was not part of the program. This was something real, something raw. "And it is in the spirit of honesty," I said, my voice dropping slightly, drawing the audience in, "that I have an announcement to make. It's an unplanned addition to our evening's program, but I feel it must be made." I saw Julian's face drain of all color. He looked pale, almost ghostly, under the warm lights of the ballroom. He started moving towards the stage, a desperate, panicked look in his eyes, but he was slowed by the thick crowd of guests who were now turned, mesmerized, toward the stage. "My husband, Julian, has always been a man of grand gestures," I said, a sad, knowing smile on my face. "He is a man of deep passions, and recently he has been channeling his passion into a new project, one that he has kept very quiet." My eyes flickered for a single searing moment toward Sophia, who looked as if she might faint. "So, in honor of my husband's newfound commitments," I announced, my voice ringing with a strength that surprised even me, "I have decided to make a personal donation, a very significant one. Tonight, I will be pledging the entire contents of our joint marital savings account to the Children's Heart Foundation." A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. It was a fortune, the result of 2 decades of shared life and work. I saw Julian stop dead in his tracks. His mouth fell open, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. His complexion had gone from pale to a sickly white. He looked as if I had physically struck him. "Furthermore," I continued, pressing my advantage, my voice rising with newfound power, "I will also be selling my collection of jewelry. The diamonds I wear tonight, the emeralds in the safe, the pearls he bought me for our 10th anniversary, and donating every last cent of the proceeds." I reached up and, with a steady hand, undid the clasp of the diamond necklace. I held it up. The stones caught the light, scattering brilliant, cold fire across the stunned faces of the audience. A marriage, after all, should not be a cage, however gilded. These beautiful things are symbols of a promise. And when that promise is broken, they lose their meaning. I placed the necklace on the podium with a soft, definitive click. "But my announcement isn't just about a donation," I said, my voice dropping once more, pulling everyone into the final devastating revelation. "It is also about a new beginning." My gaze remained locked on Julian. His face was a canvas of disbelief and fury. The man who was always in control, the master of every room he entered, was utterly and completely undone. And he knew, just as I knew, that this was only the beginning of his public unraveling. A new beginning, I repeated, my voice softening but losing none of its steely resolve. Because as of this moment, I am stepping down as co-chair of this foundation, and I am also stepping away from my 20-year partnership with my husband. I let the words settle, the finality of them echoing in the cavernous silence. I didn't need to say the word divorce. The implication was a thunderclap that resonated more powerfully than the word itself. I will be starting my own life. A life built not on illusions, but on truth. A life where my contributions are not just an accessory to someone else's ambition. I looked out at the audience, at the women whose faces reflected a mixture of shock, pity, and for some, a dawning, fierce admiration. "Thank you for your time," I said simply. I didn't wait for applause, which came a moment later, a hesitant, then growing wave of support from pockets of the room. It was a sound I would never forget. With a final, meaningful look at the diamond necklace lying on the podium like a sacrificial offering, I turned and walked off the stage. I didn't look at Julian. I didn't need to. I could feel his rage burning a hole in my back. As I descended the small steps, the spell that had held the room broke. The murmurs erupted into a cacophony of excited, shocked chatter. The press, who had been covering the event from the back, began to surge forward, their cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. My friends, true friends, rushed to my side. Clara, who had been my maid of honor, wrapped a protective arm around me. "B, that was the bravest thing I have ever seen," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Others formed a small, protective circle, shielding me from the most intrusive of the photographers and the prying questions. They began to guide me towards the exit, a silent, loyal guard. But we didn't make it far. A hand clamped down on my arm, hard and bruising. "Beatrice, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" It was Julian. His face was no longer pale. It was flushed with a deep, mottled red. His eyes, usually so full of calculated charm, were now blazing with a desperate, ugly fury. Sophia was nowhere to be seen. She had evaporated into the chaos, a ghost at the feast. I calmly met his gaze and, with a deliberate motion, pried his fingers from my arm. "I am doing what should have been done a long time ago," I said, my voice low and even, a stark contrast to his barely controlled rage. "I am ending this charade." "You've ruined me," he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "Tonight, in front of everyone. Our money, Beatrice. You gave away our money. Are you insane?" "Our money?" I gave a short, humorless laugh. "You mean the money I managed, invested, and stretched while you were busy with your new projects? The money that gave you the freedom to court your mistress on the terrace of a charity event I organized?" The direct hit landed. He flinched as if I had slapped him. "Don't you dare," he seethed, glancing around to see who might be listening. The surrounding guests were pretending not to watch, their bodies angled away but their ears straining to catch every word. "Don't I dare what, Julian? Don't I dare speak the truth? You're the one who made this public. You stood there with her, for the whole world to see. Did you think I was blind? Did you think I was a fool?" The anger I had held in check on stage was now rising, hot and cleansing. "You didn't just disrespect me, you disrespected our entire life together. You stood on a platform of family values and charity while making a mockery of your own. The hypocrisy is breathtaking." "It was a moment of weakness," he stammered, his anger momentarily replaced by a pathetic attempt at justification. "It meant nothing. You've blown this completely out of proportion. You've destroyed our family over nothing." "Nothing?" The word was a slap. 20 years is not nothing, Julian. The trust I gave you was not nothing. The woman you humiliated in front of this entire city was not nothing. That moment of weakness on the terrace was just the final confirmation of 1,000 other small betrayals. It wasn't the wound. It was just the salt you chose to pour into it. I took a step back, creating a definitive space between us. My friends moved with me, a silent, unwavering wall of support. "This is not a negotiation," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "This is a statement of fact. We are finished. My lawyer will be in contact with yours on Monday morning to discuss the logistics. Given that our primary marital asset has just been so generously donated, I imagine the proceedings will be quite straightforward." His face contorted, a mask of fury and impotence. He, the great negotiator, the man who could charm his way out of any situation, had no leverage. I had taken it all away from him and given it to sick children. There was nothing he could say, no threat he could make, that wouldn't make him look even more monstrous than he already did. Without another word, I turned my back on him. I turned my back on the life that was, and with my friends at my side, I walked through the grand doors of the Astoria ballroom and out into the cool, clear night air, leaving my husband to stand alone in the ruins of the world he had set on fire. The ride home was a surreal blur. The city lights streaked past the car window, painting abstract patterns of red, gold, and white, but I saw none of them. Clara drove, her hands steady on the wheel, while another friend, Maria, sat beside me in the back seat, her presence a warm, silent comfort. No one spoke for the first 10 minutes. The only sounds were the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sharp intake of my own breath as the reality of what I had just done washed over me in waves. I had detonated my life. I had stood on a stage and set a torch to 20 years of shared history, and for a moment, the sheer audacity of it was terrifying. Then Clara spoke, her voice soft but firm, cutting through my internal chaos. His face, B. I will never forget the look on his face. It was like he couldn't comprehend that the world didn't revolve around him. A choked laugh escaped my lips. It was a brittle, fragile sound, but it was a laugh nonetheless. He looked like a fish, I said, the image suddenly vivid in my mind. When you take it out of the water, all gaping mouth and bulging eyes. Maria squeezed my hand. A shark, maybe. One that just got outmaneuvered by a magnificent orca. The car filled with a gentle, supportive laughter. It felt like the first breath of fresh air after being submerged for too long. We talked then, not about the pain or the future, but about the moment, about the gasps from the crowd, about the way I held up the necklace, about the satisfying, definitive click it made when I placed it on the podium. We dissected the memory, turning a moment of supreme humiliation into a narrative of empowerment. It was what good friends do. They don't just help you escape the fire. They help you find the beauty in the ashes. When we pulled into the long gravel driveway of my home, the laughter died down. The grand, Tudor-style house that I had lovingly decorated, the gardens I had personally tended, stood silhouetted against the moonlit sky. It had always been my sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a museum of a life that was no longer mine. Julian's car was not in the driveway. He was likely still at the gala, trying to perform damage control, or perhaps he had gone somewhere else entirely. To her, I felt a pang, but it was duller this time, less of a stab and more of a distant ache. "Do you want us to come in?" Clara asked, turning off the engine. I shook my head. "No, thank you for everything. But this next part, I think I need to do alone." They understood. They hugged me tightly at the door, promising to call every hour, promising to be there with coffee and moving boxes in the morning if I needed them. I watched them drive away before turning to face the heavy oak door. My key slid into the lock with a familiar click. The house was silent, holding its breath. I walked through the marble entryway, my heels echoing in the stillness. Everything was exactly as I had left it hours before. The faint scent of the roses I had arranged on the console table, the family portraits smiling down from the walls, the children at various ages, Julian and I on our wedding day, a lifetime of captured happiness that now felt like a cruel joke. I walked into the living room and sank onto the plush sofa, the sapphire gown pooling around me. The adrenaline of the night had completely faded, leaving behind a profound exhaustion and a hollow, aching void. The anger that had fueled me was gone, replaced by a deep, resonant sadness. This was real. This was my life now. A quiet sob escaped me, then another, until I was weeping, not for the man I had lost tonight, but for the man I thought I had married. For the 20 years of love and hope I had poured into a foundation that had proven to be rotten. I cried for the younger version of myself, the girl who had believed so fiercely in forever. I don't know how long I sat there, letting the grief wash through me, but eventually the tears subsided. I felt emptied, but also cleansed. I stood up, my joints stiff, and walked slowly up the grand staircase to our bedroom. His bedroom now. The king-sized bed was perfectly made, my side untouched. On his nightstand lay a book he was pretending to read. On my side, a framed photo of our 2 children, now grown and in college. My children. I pulled out my phone. It had been buzzing nonstop in my purse, a frantic, vibrating beacon I had been ignoring. I opened it to a flood of notifications, texts from dozens of friends and acquaintances, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The gala had become the top trending topic on local social media. Gala announcement. Beatrice. My name, a hashtag. But amidst the chaos, there were 2 messages that mattered. One from my son, Michael, and one from my daughter, Olivia. Michael's text was simple. "Mom, saw what's happening online. Are you okay? Call me. I love you." Olivia's was longer. Mom, my phone is blowing up. People from home are sending me clips. I don't know the whole story, but I know you. And I know you wouldn't do something like this without a powerful reason. I'm with you. 100%. All the way. Call me when you can. We love you more than anything. Reading their words, their unwavering, immediate support, was like a balm on my raw soul. They knew me. They trusted me. The foundation I had built with them was solid. It was real. That was a partnership that had not been broken. A new strength surged through me. This wasn't just about ending something. It was about protecting what was truly precious. I walked into my dressing room, a space that was entirely mine, and pulled out a suitcase. I didn't pack frantically. I moved with a calm, deliberate purpose. I packed the things that mattered: my favorite books, a worn cashmere sweater, photos of my children, my laptop. I left the designer clothes, the expensive bags, the life of Mrs. Julian Croft. I was packing for the life of Beatrice. Just Beatrice. As I zipped the suitcase shut, I heard a car pull into the driveway, its tires crunching on the gravel with angry speed. The front door slammed open downstairs. Beatrice! Julian's voice, no longer whispering or hissing but bellowing with unrestrained rage, echoed up the stairs. Where are you? We need to talk. Now! I took a deep breath, stood up, and placed my hand on the handle of my suitcase. The confrontation I had fled the ballroom to avoid was now here, in the heart of my home. But I was no longer afraid. I was ready. I didn't go down to meet him. I waited at the top of the stairs, my suitcase standing beside me like a silent declaration of independence. He stormed into the foyer, his tuxedo jacket gone, his bow tie undone and hanging loosely around his neck. His face was a thunderous mask of fury. When he saw me standing there, with the suitcase, his rage seemed to momentarily falter, replaced by a flicker of genuine disbelief. What is this? He demanded, gesturing wildly at the suitcase. You're leaving? Just like that? After you've set our life on fire, you're just going to walk away? There is nothing left for me here, I said, my voice calm and steady. It was remarkable how quiet I felt inside. The storm was all in him now. You burned this life down, Julian, not me. I simply turned on the lights so everyone could see the ashes. This is about money, isn't it? He sneered, falling back on his ugliest, most basic assumption. You think you can take me for more this way? Some kind of twisted legal strategy? I gave our joint fortune to a children's charity, I reminded him gently. And I left $1 million worth of jewelry on a podium. If this were about money, Julian, I would be the worst strategist in history. This is about self-respect, a concept you might want to look up. He took a step towards the stairs, his voice lowering into a threatening growl. You listen to me. You will call the foundation in the morning. You will tell them you were overwrought, that you misspoke, that it was a symbolic pledge. We can fix this. We can put out a statement, say you had a momentary breakdown. We can salvage this. I almost laughed. Salvage. He still thought in terms of public relations and damage control. He didn't see the fundamental, irreparable fracture. He only saw the broken image. No, I said simply. No? He echoed, incredulous. No. There is no we to salvage anything. There is you, and there is me. And I will not be participating in any more of your lies. I spoke to the children, by the way. That stopped him. It was a blow I knew would land harder than any other. His role as a father was another one of his carefully curated performances. They support me, I continued softly. They love me, and they trust me. They know that whatever comes next, their mother is a woman of integrity. What will they know their father as? Julian? The man who was caught with another woman? The man who bellowed about money while his marriage fell apart? What legacy are you leaving them tonight? He had no answer. For the first time, he seemed to see beyond his own wounded pride, and a flicker of genuine despair crossed his face. He looked, for a fleeting second, like a lost little boy. But it was too little, too late. The ghost of the man I once loved couldn't save the man he had become. I picked up my suitcase. Goodbye, Julian. I started down the stairs, walking on the opposite side of the wide staircase, giving him a wide berth. He didn't move to stop me. He just stood there, watching me, as if I were a ghost leaving the home I had once haunted with love and life. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked across the marble floor, my steps echoing the finality of my departure. I didn't look back. I opened the heavy oak door, stepped out into the night, and closed it gently behind me. The click of the latch was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a cage opening. It was the sound of freedom. I didn't know where I would sleep that night, or what the morning would bring. I only knew that for the first time in a long time, I was walking toward a future that was entirely my own. Sometimes the bravest act is not to hold on, but to let go. To walk away from a beautifully decorated prison and into the unknown, armed with nothing but your own truth and the belief in a new dawn. It is in the moment of breaking that we discover the true strength we hold within. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a message of hope.